I'm Richard Campbell from the Agile Business Consortium. Welcome. I look forward to a fun-packed event. I'm in the product group, so we're responsible for things like developing Agile project management, for example. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, and I'll be talking a little bit about that today. But I'd like to hand over to Niamh to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Niamh Trundle. I'm learning designer at the consortium. I work very closely with Richard, so a lot of my job is connected to designing learning materials and intended learning outcomes, and all the learning assets that we have for AgilePM and other products as well. So our learning experience platform. But I am involved in other aspects of agility as well, and AI, which has been a big game changer recently. So yeah, really looking forward to today. And I'll pass over to Kat.
Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Kat Patel. I'm part of the APMG Change Management Advisory Advocacy Group. I've spent a huge amount of my time thinking about how to get people to value change management in the benefits it brings to organizations. So I'm really pleased to be talking about how it comes to bring agility to organizations amid what was talked about having a lot of change being impacted. And yeah, as my sort of day job is, I have a consultancy called Change Agitators. We work with leaders to help build that kind of capability internally for change across the organization. So we're going to talk about change. And I mean, it's a bit of a cliche to say itself is being disrupted. I'm just going to paint a little bit of a picture first about how we've thought about it, change in organizations. So, I want to kind of share with you what I think is different about now. Why is agility in organizations more important than it has been in the past? We've got this sort of little graphic, right? I think my experience of organizations and the way they think about change is that they will look at the long-term horizon. What are the big things that we need to be doing as a company? How much money do we want to invest in them? What things do we need to put around that we also need to be supporting, but probably aren't our big investments? That's pretty much a traditional way most organizations think about their strategy and the things they want to invest in. At the same time, their people have got lots of ideas as well. So there'll be lots of operational type things that are going to come alongside that at various points. And this is all internal. Right? This is all the things that within either the executive, the market, within teams themselves, organizations are trying to juggle. My day-to-day job has always been, what's each individual arrow? What's the impact on the business? How do they coordinate? And that's all relatively tried to be planned up front. But we don't deal with just planned up front anymore. I think one of the biggest challenges is that at any point at time, you'll just get something that you weren't expecting externally often. And I think this has always happened, but perhaps the frequency and the impact is what's different now. And of course, if you try to use a process to try and manage this, it won't be as effective as if you can actually make sense of it collectively. And that's what agility is trying to do, is when you have these big external or mini external impacts, they have all sorts of impacts on your plans. And this is now what we have to deal with. And so how do we go about doing that? I think a really good example of those, so the light blue arrows for me are, what are those external things we just never thought about, didn't know were coming, were completely unknown to us. And a really good example for me is AI. And I know everyone has heard that before, but there's an external AI is doing things that we probably can't foresee, predict, and we're trying to react to. But also the interesting thing with AI, it's now so democratized that you as an individual can choose what that thing is for you. And so now you're dealing with two types of change from the same thing. One, micro change within your organization by what people can do. And secondarily, the big change, the societal, the impacting one that's external to you that you can't choose. And so how do you as an organization think about being prepared for that? And that's what the agility discussion today is hoping to kind of seed some thoughts around. How do we get ourselves in a position where actually as a leadership team, we're prepared for things we weren't expecting, and we've got tools and techniques to help us make sense of them and then replan. We've actually got a question.
Yeah, we do. We do. So Kat's just spoken about change that you can control, or that you try to control, that others in the organization do. and unexpected change like AI, etc. But what we'd like you guys to do is turn around and have a little chat with your partner or somebody behind you, if you're sitting by yourself in the front row. And
I'll talk to you.
yeah, Kat will talk to you. And I want you to think about external challenges that you face in your organisation. So thinking about the arrow diagram, what are the big and small disruptions that you face? So just have a little think about it. We also have a QR code through Mentimeter, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. If you scan that code, or if you go to menti.com and use that number, then what you can do in your conversations, please just any topics that come up, if you just pop into that, we'll get a word cloud generated and it will help us shape what some of the things that you're dealing with.
Okay, thank you everyone for contributing to the word cloud. I'm going to pass over to Richard, who's going to pick up on some of the points that you guys have raised.
Yeah, thanks, Niamh. Right, well, I hope you found that interesting to talk to a few people about the external impacts that your organisations are facing. I'll pick a couple out from there and talk to them. You've got one that says political priorities, another one political changes, and then regulation, all of these, and funding as well. So we tie those things together. I've got a bit of a quote I just wanted to read to you. Excuse me a second. Here we go. So I don't know whether any of you have heard of Paul Krugman. He got the Nobel Prize for Economics a few years ago. And he quoted that most work in macroeconomics for the last 30 years has been useless at best and harmful at worst. Now, if that is what's coming out of the think tanks and governments in terms of how we're going to run the UK PLC, or whatever we like to call this organisation, how does that impact your organisations when you can't rely on even the highest bodies in the land to give you good advice? And the way to think about that is a real agile organisation is one that has empowered people closest to the point of problems, who really have the ability to make decisions in response to what we're seeing in the material, concrete world, not the theoretical world of ideas that might have come down in terms of public policy, but what are we actually going to do that's going to move the dial in terms of the effectiveness of your organisation? And I think as we go through the discussion on agility today, I'd like to think we'll pick up some of those points and see how it is. It's about the brains of your people and empowering people to feel like they can make those decisions within sufficient guardrails so they know what they can and cannot do. And that's a big part of moving to agility, managing those relationships. So I don't know whether, Kat, you wanted to pick up any other points from there?
I think the thing that was striking for me is that all of these things have got this unknown. There's no definitive end. It's all shaping up by lots of different stakeholders. There's lots of different people that might shape what this looks like at any point in time. So to your point, how do your people kind of persistently try to make sense of the latest and then take action? And that's almost like, someone used an analogy the other day that it's almost like you've got you and your team and you're surrounded by fog and you don't know whether the next step is off the cliff or not. The only thing you can do is sense roughly and all take a collective decision to move forward, right? But if you all go off in different directions, you're not going to stay together very long. And I thought that was quite interesting because it's about that persistent sense making in this kind of environment. They're all inherently unknown. We got one. Did you want to add anything, Niamh? So we're going to ask you to also think about, if you've got that kind of environment, how does that affect the people in your organization? So you should be able to go to the same word cloud. It should now move on. If you open your browser and refresh, you should be able to say, what are the kind of key impacts that kind of scenario environment has on your people? And we'll just take a couple of minutes for you, well, not even a couple of minutes, to have a think about that. Wow. Just the one word. Everyone said exactly the same word.
Yeah, I guess just a lot of them are very similar. If you kind of connect morale, burnout, worry, fatigue, demotivation and stress, they're quite similar. Uncertainty is connected to the change. It's nice to see excitement there as well. Yeah, sometimes change can be really positive. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So we're getting a bit more positive now.
Yeah, what's
The caffeine's kicking in. Cognitive overload. I think that's very common now. And particularly in my role as a learning designer, it's really important when we're creating learning content that we're not overloading the learner. Because we're constantly getting information from everywhere, and with AI and everything now as well. So it's really important that say if somebody is doing some course like, for example, AgilePM, that they have different opportunities to do it in a way that suits their learning. So that comes to these kind of blended courses that you guys have, and the face-to-face courses, or the learner can study synchronously, asynchronously, whatever works for them. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I was also going to say is I think one of the key things I'm observing is that anxiety that people feel from this unknown, uncertain environment can be positive if there's a method of being able to deal with it as a collective. And that's what agility is trying to sort of embed in an organization, is to create that space where people go, oh, I feel like this too. What do we do next? And so it doesn't always have to lead to overwhelm and fatigue, but this is the result if we don't deal with these external factors that we can no longer control. So recognizing it is an important first step. I've got to go back to the presentation. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the solution. So Richard's ready. He's ready to go. So the combining agility and change management together. I'll hand over to you, Richard.
Yeah, that's lovely. So humans have been on the planet for around 300,000 years. Well, Homo sapiens have been on the planet for around 300,000 years. And for the vast majority of that period on Earth, we have thrived, and clearly we have thrived as a species, largely because of our community, our ability to work together, to work collectively. The world we live in today really focuses very much on the individual, and we feel individually quite helpless. But united as a community, we're phenomenally powerful, and that's actually in our genes to build. That's where our real strength comes from as a species. Now, agility very much plays to that as an idea. So we're not alone. We're not facing this cliff of challenges, the anxiety and all the negative parts. I know that Niamh did a very good job of getting you to try to think of the more positive sides of it. But the reality is, it is quite daunting when we are alone. But when we're part of a team who we really trust, and we're able to talk to people and we can talk things out, it's amazing how many solutions we can get to rather than being isolated individuals thinking that we are without agency. Now, agility works to this in exactly the way, I'll sort of take you through some of the ideas behind this. And I know from this audience that many of you know as much about Agile project management, if not more than I do in this audience. But I'll be talking a little bit about specifically what this sort of learning does as a linchpin piece of learning that enables an organization to take a giant leap forward towards agility in general. So next slide, sir, please. So here's a little bit of AI for you. So a representation of how you might view the world being tossed around on stormy seas, a lot of uncertainty. How the hell do you make sense of this chaos? And this is the trouble. That's how the world can look like when we are standing as individuals and without an organizational structure that gives us a clue as to how to make order out of the chaos. So Kat had the diagram with all the arrows coming in all over the place. We're trying to get to a position where we can make sense of that and make progress, because doing nothing is no longer an option. Well, it's never been an option, but in particular now, we've got to make progress. So Kat, next slide, please. Now, so we're not the only ones who are thinking this way. If you haven't already seen it, I would draw your attention to the World Economics Forum's Core Skills in 2025 report. And it brings out some of the key skills which are essential for most people in the knowledge economy here. And there wouldn't be many surprises out there, but you can see analytical thinking, critical thinking is a big part. And we were just talking about that, about not taking information on face value, questioning it, expressing your concerns, being able to put your hand up, be able to whistle blow. All of these things are really important characteristics. How do you get around that? Resilience, flexibility, agility. We've got to build these skills into what we are learning in everything we do, and not just play lip service to them, but show people how they can actually live those skills, not just read about them on paper. So I would, rather than go into it in more detail here, but I don't think any of those topics on here would come as a surprise, but so many of them are bedded in the sort of learning that the three of us will be talking about for the rest of the afternoon. So if we move on, oh, one too many, there we go. So Agile project management is one of the learning products that Niamh and I are responsible for specifically developing. But one of the aspects of it which we really very rarely emphasize enough is how it's embedded, its history comes from the practical reality of trying to make the world better. So the origins of Agile project management comes from an organization called the DSDM Consortium that some of you may have heard of before. But that was a group of a number of organizations, including BT and British Airways and IBM and Data Sciences and a whole bunch of big thinkers in this area who are facing a very similar problem of how do we make progress? Why are so many of our projects failing? Why are our systems failing to deliver what the business actually needs? And they pooled their best practice together and came up with what was the DSDM method, but ultimately has evolved into the AgilePM approach to managing Agile project management. And our job is to stay close to the people who are teaching it, closer still to the people who are trying to put it into practice, so that we can see how organizations are taking these ideas and continuously refining it. Because if AgilePM was static and not growing, that's no use to anyone else. So it's come a long way in recent years. It's broadened out from being a way of managing a project to a way of thinking about how does an organization as a whole become more agile. And many of those ideas of leadership and culture are embedded within AgilePM. So we've also been very aware that some people are using AgilePM like this to run little community projects or even projects for their own home, right the way up to government departments or organizations merging two giant corporations together. There's a whole bunch of different, the scale of this is truly phenomenal. And we needed to come up with a framework which was flexible enough to do things at those sorts of extremes. And that's part of what we're doing with AgilePM. But please go on. So what I'm going to do here is I can't possibly give you a course in AgilePM in a few minutes, but I just wanted to put, for those of you who are less familiar with it.
It's just checking out one of the bits of the book.
Exactly. Some of the core ideas that are within it in order for you to understand where we're coming at from all of this. So the starting point of most projects are trying to balance between the features that are delivered, the quality of the system or the project that is being delivered, and how long it takes and what it costs to deliver. And generally what happens is, the way we run contracts is we fix the features at the top, and inevitably what happens in the real world is that time and cost become the variable and become subject to contractual negotiations and all sorts of embitterment that comes associated with doing projects that way. And if we go to the next slide, what we've done is we've turned it on its head and we said, what we're going to do with Agile project management is fix time and cost, and by its nature also therefore fix the quality with which we are going to be delivering. And what flexes are the features that are delivered, such that our focus becomes what are the most important things we must do, and make sure we deliver those must-dos, and just about everything else could be compromised, could be pushed aside to do the things that we must do.
Richard, we do this all the time at the consortium, don't we? We use must-go prioritisation.
We do.
When we're developing.
Oh, we like to think we eat our own dog food.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yes, absolutely. This is a big part of it. And I like to think that everyone thinks in this way, but it works so nicely with this way of working. Priorities become meaningful. I suppose that's the idea. But that's one of the key ideas. If we move on to another one. So This rather strange diagram, and there aren't many diagrams which are around that look quite like this, this sort of represents our flow through a project. And it starts off with the idea of a pre-project. Well, should we be doing this at all? Making a high-level business case, is this worthwhile? And then you go into a feasibility, as in, can we do it? Have we got the resources to do it, the time to do it? Where does it fit in the big picture of everything else we're doing as an organisation? And then as we move into the foundations, the next section down below feasibility on that cone there, we're starting to break the project into little pieces, and we're starting to work out what are the most important things that need to be delivered in it. And then at the bottom left, as you're looking at it, is the delivery cycle. And this is typically Scrum teams, but it could be any number of different teams who are working on the delivery of whatever the project is doing. We're breaking this down into little iterations to deliver quickly to the customer, to the person who's getting value out of this, and getting feedback so that we can decide what's the next most important thing that we need to be working on. But we don't plan everything a long way in advance. We do it in little iterations. We learn as we go. We adapt so that we're constantly asking the question, what is the most valuable thing we can do next?
And Richard, you're using Scrum as an example, but it can be a different delivery engine.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think at the history of this was typically, DSDM had its own delivery approach. Many organizations are still using that as well, but Scrum is by far the most popular, most commonly used delivery approach that's out there. So we just use that as an example, but it could be many different delivery approaches. So this gives you the idea of what we're trying to do: deliver quickly, deliver to the customer, get feedback, and make the decisions what to do next. So now I think at this point I'm going to hand over to Niamh to talk a little bit about this. Talk about roles.
Yeah, no problem. So we've got in the new version of AgilePM, we reworked this graphic because we wanted to show all the different roles in AgilePM. So we have, in the new version, the new edition, we have solution delivery, value ownership, and delivery enablement. And we have them in those circles to represent, the team. But we also have them color coded, so you can see which kind of value stream they're working in. To the left of the circle, we have the advisory role. So maybe, Richard, you could pick up why they're on the outside and not within the circle, because I know people have asked us that question before.
I certainly can. It's probably a good link to bring Kat into this as well, which is, so there's a core group of people who are going to be working on the project full time, and there'll be maybe multiple teams, multiple delivery teams in the center circle, but they're all being coordinated by, you'll see the project manager in pink, the business sponsor in the top left-hand corner, and the solution architect in the top right-hand corner. There may be many teams in the middle, but they need to draw upon other people in the organization as advisors with different capacities to come in and assist. And in the context of change, one of those advisors might be a change specialist or a team of specialists who can provide assistance. How do we manage the change that's coming into the project? Because then there's this question, where is the change coming from, and are we managing it appropriately? And so maybe I can ask Kat to talk a little bit about how that would fit in that context.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw this, one of the things that I kind of got slightly offended by was that change manager wasn't on there at all. But no, I rationalised it in my head eventually. No, but it's a really good point. So one of the things, if you go back to the original diagram, all of those arrows, if an organisation was applying Agile in this manner to every one of those arrows, they'd be thinking about change. Every one of those roles would inherently have to be thinking about what is the impact I'm doing to the organisation? How does it work with all the other projects we're working on, and how do we coordinate them in a way that delivers value for the organisation? Unfortunately, that isn't where most organisations are. So the advisory change role does often sit on the outside of AgilePM. Sometimes it sits inside it, but it is about the level of maturity within projects in organisations. And that is wherever it is for whatever organisation you are. What we're trying to advocate for is, if you get AgilePM mindset right in your projects, then change is part of that delivery. And if you do it across your portfolio, guess what? You get better at trying to build change as a capability in your organization. So that's how I made it make sense to me. I'd have felt much better after I made that rationalization in my head. I don't know if there was anything else that we wanted to add on that before we move on.
No.
I was just going to talk a little bit to the colouring, just briefly, if I may, on this. So what we recognise that there are various people working in the project, and there are quite distinct groups of people who work together. We've grouped together the project manager and the product owner, the Scrum Master together. As in, they're primarily concerned with the area known as delivery enablement, what we refer to as delivery enablement. So they're trying to make sure that the project actually delivers. It's the mechanisms of working through the organisation to get the organisation to deliver the results that the project needs. But that's quite different from those roles that we're representing in the orange, which we call the value ownership. So these are the ones who take ownership of where is value being delivered by this project, who are the customers, what's the priorities, and why is it important for the organisation? It's all the whys. Why is this important for the organisation to do the project, and are we genuinely delivering the value that's expected of them? And ultimately, they are going to accept or not accept this project as being delivering. And the teal colour here, or blue, it looks very more blue on the screen, light blue. These are the people who are involved with the solution delivery itself. So these would typically be the developers, very much working with the solution architect to make sure that the whole combination works together and physically works and is testable and meets all the test criteria and works together with the rest of the team to make things that actually work. So you might say that's where the real work is done. An awful lot of the intellectual work is being done by the other roles, but if you like, the hard work of the project is very much being done in the teal area. So I just wanted to bring that out, and we were quite clear in trying to emphasize the nature of those roles and how they interplay and where the particular relationships are in the roles in the whole of the project organization.
So I'm just going to pick up then and just talk about, if we talk about what we've recognized as agile practices really well embedded across each of our projects, and that change thinking is part of every one of those projects. When we get one of these external factors and we bring change thinking that is part of that leadership as part of every one of those roles, we should be able to take a moment and pause, look across that portfolio and say, well, what do we do now that we've displaced everything? And how should we reset this? So our arrows should go something like this. Nice and tidy again. I like tidy arrows. But that's what's potentially on offer. Every time you get an external factor that you weren't thinking of, if you've got the mindset within each of your projects to go, well, what's the impact on us? What's the collective impact on the organisation? What do we collectively do to reset the portfolio and move forward and take people with us? Then all of a sudden you've got a very adaptive way of dealing with things you couldn't have planned for but have to react to. And this is what we're, again, sort of the goal for this is we can no longer plan for every eventuality. So we have to do something different, right? We have to think our way through this instead of trying to plan for every eventuality. You're going to talk about capability first, aren't you? Sorry.
Yeah.
Jumped ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Richard, how do you build capability for change? So if we flick on to the next slide, we have the FBA, so the Framework for Business Agility that we use within the consortium, and we encourage other organizations to use. So maybe you could talk a little bit around what the circles mean and how they impact the organization to deal with change.
Splendid, yes, of course, Niamh, yeah. So I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram before, but it's view it not so much as a framework, but a set of lenses that you should use to consider your own organization. And it starts in the dark blue area in the middle, and we think about agility of culture, leadership and governance as at the heart of the move towards business agility. So often the challenges of moving an organization to make it more agile are constrained by those. You've got the wrong culture. It's very hierarchical, very command-oriented, for instance. So that would be anti-agile in the vast majority of cases, very difficult to run in that way. The leadership style is not associated with some of the values which we spoke about right at the beginning of empowering the people closest to the problem to make the decisions within well-defined guardrails. Giving up, relinquishing that control is a real skill. And so how do you teach the leadership that really brings that about? That's at the heart of it too. And governance, this again, we've touched on this already, the contracts, the annual budgets, the other factors which control how teams work and what they are delivering to need to be agile. So we need to have different ways of thinking about all of these things and bring the legal department and the finance department into the process of becoming agile as well. They can't be adjuncts to it. You're always going to be banging your head against the wall if they don't move with you on that route to agility. Easier said than done, especially when you're working to government planning cycles and those sorts of issues. I know that's a problem, but that doesn't mean that we can ignore it. What I'd emphasize here is that one of the interesting stats that Ellie showed me a little while ago was the large number of people in the Home Office and the NHS and the Ministry of Defence who've done Agile project management training. I mean, it's tens of thousands, isn't it? It's huge. So the ideas are in even government departments along those lines. We really ought to be able to work in more flexible ways there. So thinking about culture, leadership and governance then enables the main part of the organisation in the light blue that circles it to operate. So we've got the normal day-to-day operations, business as usual, if you like. How can we be more agile in that space? And then the whole area that Kat has been talking to here, change. How do we manage change in an agile manner and respond to it appropriately? And the support round to the side, these are the IT departments, the infrastructure people, everyone that enables the business to work, the human resources organizations, enables the organization to become more agile. And all of these need to be considered. Are they agile? Are they actually helping us make progress where we need to in the most effective way? And all of that needs to be governed by strategy, the grey circle that goes around the outside. So what is our organisation doing? Where is our priority? Who are we serving and why? This has all got to fit within it. And we've got to have agility of strategy as well. So are we adapting and learning? And is our strategy moving with the time?
Thanks, Richard. And in all those aspects of the FBA, we also have different frameworks, don't we? We have the 9 principles of agile leadership. We have the culture matrix, which we'll touch on later. But I wanted to ask Kat, because I think if you click onto the next slide, Kat, so it's all very well and good having the nice framework, but what happens if people don't use it properly? So Kat's going to give us a nice example of that, about the hidden cost misalignment.
Yeah, I think you also talked about what that hidden cost is. I'm going to stand up for a moment because I'm going to have to talk as I play. Has anyone played a game called Lumosity? Anyone heard of it? It's a brain training game. It's got loads of different ones in it. There's one called Train of Thought. So I'm going to play you Train of Thought on level 2, which is the left screen. Right, you just watch that. Your goal is to take every train that's coming out of the station and deliver it to its destination by flicking the switches. Okay, we've got 2 minutes. I'm just going to talk while you're watching that, and we won't watch the whole thing. But imagine this is a metaphor for either your day-to-day individual volume of tasks you've got to do, or your organisation's volume of change. Now, I also ask you a quick question. Who here thinks they're good at multitasking? Come on. Okay. I would actually put their hands. No, I definitely won't. But I would say no one is actually good at multitasking. The reason is you don't really multitask. What you do is context switch. You momentarily pause what you're doing so you can turn your attention to something else and then let that thing go, but you're going to turn your attention back. So, and what you're doing is you're using something called your working memory. Your working memory, as you get older, gets much shorter. You can hold less things in your working memory. So the reason I tell you that is I played this game with my daughter. My daughter is 11. She saw me playing this game. The furthest I've ever got, there are 14 levels. The furthest I've ever got, and I've played this game for a long time, is level 12. I've never been able to get past level 12. Within about 3 weeks, she got all the way up to level 14. So the thing is, what we're trying to do with agility is create the tools in everybody to be able to deal with the volume of change. Right now, you have to have honest conversations in your organization. Do we have the right volume of change for the capability we have? If you don't, you're going to not be able to play this game very well. and you're going to see things fail. So what's more important to you? Doing loads of stuff but not delivering, or doing the right volume for the capability you have and getting each one safely to your destination? That's what I told myself when I played it with my daughter. I'm quite happy on level 12. She's happy on level 14. But I'm just going to play for you level 14 when I played it for a demonstration of this. And I wanted to see if you can just have a think how well you get along in playing this. And again, you think about what does it mean to build your capability in your organization, to have those honest conversations, because it's not playing. Is it playing? No, it's not playing. Hold on one second. I stopped it from playing. We'll just skip it along a bit. So that whole challenge in your organization is that unrelenting volume that keeps coming. Now, unrelenting is itself sometimes a choice. Leadership teams will keep saying we need to be doing more and more new things. One of the things my organization, Change Agitators, is about is helping organizations have those more honest conversations about the right volume for change. It doesn't often go down well, but when you tell line managers that they've got actually a voice in the company, and if your AgilePM project leaders all got together and said, guess what, the volume we can deal with right now at this moment in time is X, what would you like us to do, and give options, that's a very different conversation to be having with your leadership than just going, we can't deliver all of this, or, oh, we've got to deliver all of it, we don't have the resources. And that's what we're trying to do, is have more honest conversations when we're at the pinch points for the capability we have. So, like I said, you've got one thing that you can manage the volume of change. The other thing I'll say, when I was playing this on level 12, my daughter couldn't help reach over my shoulder and press the right button so that she could see where I was going to go wrong. Now, I would say that didn't end well, because I was thinking in the moment, hold on, she's pressed something. I wasn't thinking about that. I've pressed it back and it's missed the destination. Now, what does that teach me? If I'm honest, that teaches me don't play it around her. Second, it does teach me I need to be really clear about how we're going to play this game together. So if we're going to play this game together, why don't you take those ones, I'll take these ones, and we'll safely deliver them all. And this is the other thing that the capability allows you to do. If you think about your organization and you insist on doing a volume that is greater than your individual capacity, you better be really good at talking to one another, because that's how you'll coordinate. And this is why it's such a simple demonstration of whether you've got the right capability in your organization to deal with the volume, but also whether you're talking effectively enough your leaders that are delivering change. And again, AgilePM does a really good job with change management thinking to think about the volume and the impact, right? Where does our volume sit? Where does our ability to communicate effectively across the organization sit? And can we deliver that portfolio set? So I hope you enjoyed that. I thought as soon as I saw it, I went, that's definitely going in this presentation. Yeah. See, and it says nice work. I've got 51,000, but that's still not.
There's going to be loads of people going home on the train playing that.
Yeah, no, I have no association to Lumosity whatsoever, but you do get a 30-day free trial if you want to go and try it. Oh.
There's actually, I was reflecting while you were speaking there, Kat, because we, in the Agile Business Consortium, we actually have capability leads within our teams. So, for example, I'm the capability lead for the learning team. So it's about what can we actually do volume-wise. So, and I don't think it's not an or, it's an and, isn't it? It's control volume and coordinate better.
Well, one of the things I think is, I always say, we've reached the limits of the ability to plan. Mm-hmm. But what we haven't done is we haven't maximized what we get out of our planning, which is that we don't once we've got a really credible portfolio view of what we're delivering, are we managing it for change, or are we allowing that to become unstable again by just letting things? That's the bit that's the kind of value add, is get that portfolio looking really healthy and then get it managed really tightly around the right behaviors. And that's the bit that falls down often. So you do need that capability assessment, don't you? And no organization really does this particularly well. What's our current level of capability for delivering change? It's all right. Play this game.
Okay. And something that can help us deal with all of those things is the 9 principles of Agile leadership. So the 9 principles of Agile leadership they're part of the FBA because it's part of the leadership circle, but can also be embedded in any Agile team, but we have embedded in AgilePM. So I'm going to pass over to Richard to talk about how the 9 principles have been added or amended into the new version, but also the significance of the 3 different colours and the 3 Cs.
Splendid, yes. Well, I like the 3 C's: communication, commitment, and collaboration, mostly because commitment is the one that's usually forgotten. Scrum has been really good at encouraging members of teams to communicate ideas and to collaborate towards moving solutions forward. But commitment is more than just commitment to your team, it's commitment to the vision of the organization. How are we going to deliver the value that the organization is committed to doing? And what is our role within our project or our activity relative to the big picture? And how committed are we as a team to actually getting that over the line and delivering consistently? Because it's that's the bit that represents actual progress, or rather measurable, tangible progress at the end of the day. And so it's really important that we bring those sort of pieces out. And some of the characters, I just talked to a couple of those, which I think are particularly important. Actions speak louder than words for communication. So be the person you want to be. Model the role that you want your team to do. So hypocrisy is out of the door. Well, what does that mean? How do you make sure you actually walk the walk and talk the talk? These are really important things. Under collaboration, leaders devolve appropriate power and authority. Now, this is probably one of the biggest barriers that many organizations have got on their journey towards agility. How do they give up? Or rather, it's not really giving up power. Real authority comes with the power to help others understand this is now your responsibility. This is how you are empowered to work. And welcoming that as the way forward, because you realize that getting these people who really no matter how brilliant the person at the top of the organization is, they're nowhere near as clever as the 50 people who are actually close to the different problems in your organization. So getting those brains properly working in alignment, which is going back to exactly the point that Kat was making before. How do you get them focusing on the things that they're actually able to do, but within the guardrails to do the right thing? So I think, I don't know whether you wanted to bring up any other points that you're particularly fond of there.
Yeah, I just love the one in collaboration where it's great ideas can come from anywhere in the organization, because I think people forget about that, and often it's only like exec teams that are discussing, workforce planning or change management, but actually it's the people that are closest to the problem that come up with the best solutions. And also feedback. Feedback's really important, within the learning organization. But it's feedback is how we improve, it's how we get better. And also the leadership, the leadership is everywhere. It's not, like Richard said, a hierarchical structure, people wielding power over other people. It's not like that at all. So yeah, I think they're my favorite ones. And it's really nice to see it in the latest version as well. So I think we have a poll next. So again, it should work with the same.
Yeah, if you go to the same link.
The same link. If you open the same link. Okay, so.
And if you don't have the link, you can go to menti.com and you can just type in the number 16319424 and it will take you to the same place. So
this one's slightly different. So you have a question about your organization and where you are in your journey to an agile culture. So we'll just give you a few minutes, and then we'll elicit some feedback maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, ideally we wanted that completely sloping, but you're close enough.
That's pretty close.
That's good. Well, I think this shows us that every organization, or there's two sides to it. There's a reality of how far on that journey every organization is on that agile path, and how it's perceived. And those may be very different things by different people in the organization, which actually plays to the next slide, if I can go on. I'll maybe come back to the data in just a moment. There we go. So the consortium's done a fair amount of work around agile culture, and these graphics bring out the main characteristics that the way we've been thinking about agile culture. So on the right-hand side, you will see a journey, and it's a continuum that goes from at the bottom where we are surviving, and you're trying to move to a position where you're transformational. But also culture has many dimensions, as in you may be transformational in your purpose and results, for instance. So what is the purpose of our organization? And that may be really clear to everyone, and we're communicating it consistently and everyone understands it really well, and we're executing it remarkably well. But we may be fundamentally different with some of the other parameters. So well-being and fulfillment within the employees may be extremely low. So maybe what I would like to do actually is I'll bring Niamh in here to talk a little bit more about it. But we've taken all of these different parameters and allowed you to properly understand where your organisation is, or rather where you perceive your organisation, and compare it with others. But
thanks, Richard. Yeah, so we identified these different elements of culture, of an agile culture, and the different levels from surviving to transformational. And we've put it into a matrix. So essentially what organizations can do is they can use the culture matrix, kind of like Richard said, to identify where they are for each of those elements. But they can also get a report. And it can give you, you can, comes back to feedback. It's a really good way to identify the areas that you still need to work on. So you might be thriving in trust and transparency, but you may be only surviving in innovation and learning, and that's not going to help you moving forward with all the different changes that are coming through an organization. So it's a really useful tool to kind of map your organization now, and then maybe do it again in 3 months or 6 months' time too. And I think it leads nicely into fostering an agile culture. I turned myself off there. Fostering an agile culture in an organization. It in that framework for business agility that we looked at, it radiates throughout the whole of that. So you have an agile culture within your leadership team. You have, you're thinking about the strategy in an agile way. You're thinking about all the different elements in an agile way, because the culture is embedded, and it's not only culture on an organizational level. You can do it within your teams, or you can do it as an individual. Like, how agile are you? You can't expect your organization to be agile if you're not. Kind of back to what Richard was saying, you have to walk. If you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. So it's not just about doing agile, it's about being agile as well. And I think, this is where agility and change management really complement each other. So I'm going to pass back to Kat.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot, and the original situation of having external disruption coming in and throwing off that volume of change you've already got planned and figuring out how to move forward. I hope we've told a relatively compelling story that, at varying levels, your projects you're running need to come with an agile mindset. The organization's leadership needs to come with change thinking to bring that together. And this is the one thing I think, that not everybody needs to get to nirvana in this stuff, right? Like, it's got to be sized to your organization. You've got to do the right volume of change. You've really got to ask yourself, what is the right volume for the capability we have? And change management is trying to get you to think, what's the impact of everything we're doing? And is this working for the people in our organization, or are we creating the overwhelm, the anxiety, the frustration, the challenge? Is actually slowing us down? That's the biggest offer that this can bring to your organization. I'll hand over to Richard to talk about what the flip side of that is, bringing agile in. And I'll maybe just invite a thought, which is, if you were going to invest time in your organization in one of these, where is the biggest value? Is it in bringing change management? Is it in bridging agile, or is it a bit of both? Just have a think about that while you reflect on it.
The takeaway around agile thinking that I would encourage you to think about is striking that right balance between empowering the brains, the brilliant people in your organization to take responsibility and own delivery of value because they are closest to the problem, with the top level direction and control and meeting it appropriately in the middle? Have you got the structures and the tools and the language to enable that to happen in a practical way? And it's bringing those two things together that becomes true agility. It's characterized by, there's an expression which is gaining traction called the dangling scrum problem, that so many organizations have empowered Scrum teams to go off and develop their products or their capabilities by themselves, but they've lost touch. They're dangling. They've lost connection to the organization values and direction. And the board very often feels disempowered or lack the power and the language to control what's going on there. And true agility brings those two things together.
I really like that, Richard. And, it kind of feeds into my takeaway from today, because I'll always look at everything from a learning perspective because it's my job. But I think you can't implement change management or agile thinking if you don't have a learning organization and if you don't have a growth mindset. So I think it's really important that, invest in your people and each other and give each other feedback and cross-skilling and all that kind of stuff, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I think we've tried to cover quite a bit, but I think we're open to questions if anyone has any.
I think the previous slide where you said about the different strategies or the matrix, we didn't see the matrix, but do you mind maybe bringing that
the
back
culture
up again?
matrix?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Would it be the case, and depending as to where your company falls, there's a different strategy to adopt? And I guess does the matrix almost give indications as to, what I shouldn't say a solution, but what the guide could be?
Yeah, so we have the Agile Culture Matrix is available on the Agile Business Consortium website, and you can download it, you can have a look, and it would depend, you might have, if we just use the innovation and learning example again, you might have to have a kind of learning strategy within your organization to try and bring it up to, you don't want to have one thing that's transformational and everything else is just surviving. You want to kind of get the balance before you can move forward. So strategy-wise, the matrix will help you to identify where you need to focus the strategy. Yeah.
I was just to build on that. I think culture is one of those notoriously difficult subjects where getting data you can actually work with is very difficult. And this toolkit that we have allows you to put numbers to it. Now, numbers aren't everything, and I'm not sort of a pure empiricist here, but you've got to be able to start with something and actually be able to measure whether we're making progress. And it goes to your question, progress, where do we put our effort? Culture is notoriously the most difficult thing to change in an organization, and moving that dial can take a long, long time. But you've got to know, are we actually doing anything that's affecting it in a positive way? And one of the beauties of the way that this toolkit is set up is you could take, for instance, 20 people. I don't know how big your organization is, but let's say you could take 20 people and fill out the survey today, analyze the data and identify, here are our strengths, here are our weaknesses. What strategies are we best taken to make progress on the weak areas? And then ask a different 20 people to take the survey another 6 months later or a year later and compare the results. And then you're starting to see some trends. You're starting to see, are we actually making progress? Or at least an indication as to whether you're or not, because otherwise you're sort of operating blind with culture, and it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, I'll go next. Yeah, you've talked, pretty big picture here. A lot of, culture change, mindset change, big organizational transformational changes that are very long-winded and difficult. But then you did talk about this toolkit, and can you tell us more about the toolkit?
Okay, sure. Yeah, sure. So we have a number of different toolkits, first of all, for different aspects of agility. And we worked with a psychologist who put together a series of a questionnaire, very complex questionnaire, to ask you different questions in different ways, or the same question in slightly different ways, to help the individual express all of those different parameters. It takes probably about half an hour or so to complete it. It's a lot of questions, but it tries to get to real trends, to really properly understand all of those different parameters and where you are, or where an individual perceives the organization is across all of those parameters. And you can have a look at that and actually look at the way the questions are structured. So if you are an analyst in that area, you can say, intellectually, does that make sense to you? And if people answered those questions, would that give me useful data? So I think it works both ways. I mean, just to trust it blind is not good. I think it would be properly understand how we develop it, but then bringing that data again from a group of people so that you can even better view it across the whole organization, because some people may have a very maligned view of one aspect of culture from their own personal experience. But how do you know that that's just one person's experience and it's totally different for the other 100 people who you might ask? So you have to build all of these different factors in to get a proper view as to where you actually are right now.
Critical thinking and bias and all that kind of stuff. But we do have a critical thinking course and a course on agile culture on the website as well, because I wrote it. So
Teaches you how to use the
it
toolkit,
teaches
basically.
you how to use it's called the Pulse survey. So it teaches you how to use the survey. You can do it in the way that Richard spoke about, or you can just, you could just as a starter for 10, print out the matrix and then start having discussions with your team about the areas that they feel are weakest. So there's lots of ways that you can work it depending on what your team and your organization's like.
I was going to make one comment, just because we didn't spend very long on that survey. And I would invite you to do something, which is there's a room full of people. You've heard from us talk about how to build a more agile culture and the value of that. There's people in this room that are on that journey, right? So whoever is in the left-hand side of this that's not even started, talk to someone that's on the other side of it and ask them what were the first steps they did, what were the practical things. Right, we've talked about frameworks, we've talked about methodologies, we've talked about mindsets. It's all nice. We know why we want to do it. We know that we've got to do it, but actually there are people here that have done it in practice. So I really invite you, if you're willing to share which of those you were and tell people, it's a really good opportunity to kind of help you on that journey. One of the greatest things about the journey is it takes time, and it does take a bit of a community, and you've got one right in front of you. So it's really important that you tap into it.
I was just going to make one last little announcement. So the consortium for the last 3 years has been running a program called the Agile Business Awards. And what we do is we talk to our organizations who are associated with the consortium and ask them to come and give a presentation and write a report on their journeys to agility. The next awards is in November. It's fairly soon. Actually, no,
End of September.
It's end of September, very soon.
Yeah.
I remember the date. God, it's even sooner.
30th and the 1st, I think.
Not much of an announcement. I don't even know the date's my own event, is it? I'm not intimately involved with it. But
Good news, you can take it in your stroke, can't you? Because you're agile. So.
Well,
Yeah.
there is that. So, but if you wanted to hear a number of organizations, from financial institutions to manufacturers to government departments, healthcare, all sorts of different organizations, standing up and saying, what have they achieved on their journey to agility? And there's also on our website, there are videos from previous years as well, so you can go back and look at them. And they cover all sorts of different areas. And the beauty of agility is you can learn from the agile journeys of other organizations really, really well and say, that sounds like a good idea, or that's how we developed this leadership style, or we developed the culture in this direction, or we improved our delivery, or we improved the loyalty our customers are giving. Whatever the different things that are driving your journey to agility, there's probably some case studies in there that may be of interest to you, but better still, come along and listen live in September.
It's free.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's free.
It's free too. Yeah.
It's online, it's free, and there's also a report that's come out of that. So it's the Insights report. So that should be released this week, I think, or next week. So it kind of summarizes all of the different insights that those organizations gave us when they went through the application process. I just wanted to say something about agility, because I know Kat was joking with Richard saying, oh, be agile about it. But I think that's one thing that you don't like, you can make a joke about it, but I think a lot of people can also weaponize agility, so they can use it as an excuse. So that's why all of these frameworks and everything are really important, to embed a proper agile culture and have a really good understanding of what agility is. It's not just a fad word, and it's not a way of being, what's the word? I don't know if you use loosey-goosey about stuff. It's having kind of flexibility and, that side of things. It's not about weaponizing it. So I think people tend to do that sometimes.
Great. So thank you very much, guys. First of all, a round of applause to the panel, please. I think you really brought it to life for the room. And given that you said you didn't practice that, it was perfect. So thank you. On behalf of ILX, we have some food, we have some nibbles, we have some drinks now. If you are on the left-hand side of that, just starting out on your journey, stick around, talk to people in the room. There's a number of people here from ILX who have supported organisations through that journey, who can talk to you about it and talk to you about some of the ways in which we can implement solutions alongside you to solve those problems, but also talk to the other people in the room and network. And thank you very much for coming along today, and enjoy.